Tonight on CFTK-TV News, the District of Kitimat has approved a change to a land agreement, BC's Premier is launching a very expensive housing program, and heavy metal music apparently attracts more than just human fans.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin, and here's what's making the news in the Northwest and beyond for today. A decision has been made by the District of Kitimat to approve a motion that will allow for a modification to a land agreement. The agreement is one between the district and Cedar LNG, and this change will lead to the use of an alternate pipeline route that is said to reduce environmental and community impacts. Although the route does go through land meant to be environmentally preserved, and the pipeline will send natural gas to the Cedar LNG site located on the west side of the Douglas Channel. If the project does happen, Cedar LNG will end up paying Kitimat a total of around $111,343, and reports are indicating that the decision on whether or not to go through with it will be made within the next 12 months or so. Specifically, the choice on a final investment decision has to be made by February 5th of next year. Any Prince Rupert residents that are big fans of going out in nature will soon have easier access to it, as the city has begun working on a construction project. The project in question is the work being done on the Cloudberry Trail, where contractors are in the midst of working on a 1-kilometer segment of trail that spans from the Civic Center to Prince George Street. This trail is overseen by the volunteer group known as Cayenne Trails, and they're hoping more people can end up seeing Prince Rupert's natural, beautiful areas. The construction plans seem to aim to use the path to connect Prince George and Port Edward together too. On February 29th, between 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Terrace RCMP will be hosting an event mainly targeted towards those looking to potentially join the force one day. The event in question is known as Coffee with a Cop, and it will be held at 3100 Caleb Street in the city of Terrace. As mentioned earlier, the purpose of the event is for the Terrace RCMP Corporal Jason Adams and Constable Kelly Cates to answer questions that people may have about recruiting and possible careers with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police while getting a cup of coffee with them. Both of the officers will be more than willing to share information about their backgrounds, and for more information on this event, it has both a Facebook page as well as its own website, coffeewithacop.com. Now to the housing crisis that has crippled cities across the province. Premier David Eby launched an almost $3 billion housing program to build more rental units. It's the latest in a flurry of measures from the province to ramp up construction, but critics are questioning when we'll see real results. CTV's Rob Buffum reports.
It's the province's latest effort to attack the housing crisis. A plan for rental housing on publicly owned land, including land at UVic, geared to middle-income British Columbians.
The middle class is struggling in our province, that the people who make our province go are struggling to find a decent place to live.
The government pledges the plan will build 4,000 homes at 20 sites across BC. So far, there are only 3 confirmed locations, including one in North Van and another in the Cowichan Valley. The units will be marketed to renters with household incomes between $84,000 and nearly $200,000. At least 20% of the 20 sites will be rented out at 20% less than market rate.
Too many families are paying half of their income or more just to cover the rent.
The province is providing $950 million in grants and relying on $2 billion in previously announced funds for low-cost financing to entice developers to get the projects built, and claims streamlining red tape will get them constructed in 18 months compared to current timelines up to 5 years. But there are plenty of details that remain vague, including just how many homes in total will get built with the plan.
We're talking about thousands of units of housing, but the nature of it makes it difficult to give a precise number.
And despite a flurry of housing legislation last fall, new stats from BC Housing indicate fewer new homes were built last year than 2022, a decline that continued last month.
With all of this new housing legislation being brought in bits and pieces, with all the additional pressures being put on municipalities, and the confusion for developers in terms of what their zoning is going to be at the end of the day, they're downing tools.
Coming up next, a scandal has arisen from a major BC drug bust. Welcome back. February 14th is a day about love that many people look forward to, but for thousands of others, it's a somber, emotional day as they took part in the annual Women's Memorial March. Not only is it a day to remember, but to ask why women are still going missing. CTV's Isabella Zavarisi has more.
A sea of red marching through downtown Vancouver. Their voices strong in memory of those they've lost.
The last I've seen was my sister and her niece. They passed away a week apart, a block apart, just a couple of blocks over.
The Women's Memorial March is held every year on February 14th to mourn missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit and trans people. It began in 1992 to honor an Indigenous woman who was killed on Powell Street. Decades later, a national inquiry looked into this crisis, creating 231 calls to action. While there has been progress, it's been too slow for those who have been touched by loss.
It's still happening. Women and sisters are still missing. And here we are, 2024, and something's got to be done.
The march really hits close to home. I've had friends, unfortunately, that have been lost. A couple on the East End. So it really hits close.
The faces of those lost, held by those who loved them, as marchers pause to commemorate where women were last seen or found. Deeply personal landmarks, shared with those who understand.
You can feel the energy. You can feel it's strong. And in our language, we call it sumik. Sumik is like our magic, our strong, our strength. And yeah, I didn't expect to get this emotional.
Emotion and connection, in mourning and remembrance.
This is what is the work that needs to be done. Listen to people's stories, because there is pain, there's heartache, and there's joy and happiness.
For 33 years, the march has been that place to grieve, but also to heal. A reminder of the work that still needs to be done.
It's momentum, and it's what we need.
Isabella Zavarisi, CTV News, Vancouver.
Now to a scandal surrounding one of the BC's biggest drug busts. Charges have been stated against 3 men who were once described as being at the top of the fentanyl trafficking pyramid. The investigation that led to their arrest has been marred by alleged misconduct by Victoria police officers. CTV's Anna McMillan reports.
In 2020, it was touted as a triumph for police in BC.
This operation successfully targeted the top of the fentanyl trafficking pyramid in British Columbia.
Years after that press conference with Victoria's police chief, the prized investigation has unraveled. Charges against 3 alleged drug dealers have been stayed after prosecutors learned about alleged police misconduct during the investigation.
It's embarrassing for them and embarrassing for the profession that this has now occurred.
The misconduct allegations are linked to one of the Vic PD officers on the case, Rob Ferris. A court record states that in May of 2020, when police began investigating men they believed were trafficking fentanyl, Ferris himself was under investigation by the RCMP for breach of trust and obstruction of justice.
It was a bit of a crapshoot on the decision-making of Victoria PD to leave that officer on.
The court record states they did so as to not alert Ferris to the fact he was under investigation. When the constable was arrested in June of 2020, Vic PD dropped all investigations he was involved with, including the fentanyl trafficking probe.
From an outsider looking in, it would have been very easy, I think, to replace everybody, start from scratch.
A few days after Ferris was arrested, Vic PD picked the investigation back up under a new file number. The court document states Crown Counsel was not initially told about the first investigation involving Ferris and search warrants that had been obtained during it. After learning about it, prosecutors stayed drug and weapons charges against 2 men on February 17th of 2023 and another man last month on January 19th.
It's disappointing of the outcome, but I think for that particular decision, we needed more evidence and we needed to continue on and gather further information regarding Constable Ferris's activities.
As for Ferris, he was never charged criminally and has since retired.
There were some mistakes that were made and we have corrected those mistakes, and we're going to move forward.
In the wake of these revelations, Lewis says public trust in police will take a heavy hit. Anna McMillan, CTV News, Victoria.
The provincial government is plugging millions of dollars in protecting Fraser Valley homes and farms from future flooding. Despite urgent requests to fund a second pump station, the feds have been silent. CTV's Michelle Bernero has more on the calls for Ottawa to deliver on promised help.
They are the images the people of Sumas Prairie can't forget.
We're not safe yet, so we're living on pins and needles.
But residents here also remember the heroic efforts of volunteers.
Now we're on rescue mission number 1 here.
Chris Kitt was one of those who helped save the Barrowtown pump station from being overrun by floodwaters.
We knew we had to do something to barricade kind of the weak point. So we grabbed an old pool liner and some tarps. We grabbed one of our neighbors' excavators, and we just started packing material against the weak spot.
The Barrowtown pump station is critical to preventing flooding on Sumas Prairie and is in desperate need of upgrades. The province saying it couldn't wait any longer for federal government help, announcing more than $76 million for those improvements.
This is everything from a flood wall to other critical improvements to make sure we're not dependent on pool liners to protect the people of this area.
The province says it has now invested $180 million in Abbotsford's flood recovery, but the mayor says more funding and more work is needed.
Without adding a Sumas River pump station or creating habitat enhancement flood storage area, Seventh First Nations remains unprotected, as does the west side of Sumas Prairie, the U.S.-Canada border crossing, rail crossing, and portions of Highway 1.
Last June, Abbotsford submitted a $1.6 billion funding application to Ottawa for long-term flood mitigation, including a second pump station. The city and province still don't have an answer.
We're keeping the pressure on them to show up with the money that they committed to when they were responding in the initial days of the flood.
If we don't get that pump station on the Sumas River, the west side of the lake will flood again.
And with reminders still of the devastation of 2021, the people of Sumas Prairie want assurances that everything is being done to stop a disastrous repeat. Michelle Bernero, CTV News, Abbotsford.
Turning to tonight's weather, the North Coast is likely to see some clear conditions at a low down at 0 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area will also deal with clear conditions of its own and a low of -4 degrees, and the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District is also set to have clear skies, but a low down at -20 degrees. On the North Coast, their upcoming week will consist of sun to begin and go to clouds and then showers after that, while the high moves from 7 to 8 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, their next week or so should move from sun to clouds and then back again, before ending with flurries and rain, with the high shifting between 1 and 4 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, the week for them will deal with sun, then some mixed sun and clouds, and finally all clouds, with the high moving from -5 to 2 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is slippery sections, utility work, bridge maintenance, and roadside brushing, plus the Usk ferry is out of service, and the cable car is in effect. Highway 37 has some slippery sections too, while also having compact snow as well as various bits of maintenance. Some slippery sections on the Nishka Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has slippery sections of its own. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, a woman has warnings for others after renting what was supposed to be a dream home. Welcome back. A woman who rented her dream home through a short-term rental site has a warning for other hosts. As Evan Kenny reports, most of her belongings are now gone and her house has been trashed.
Jocelyn St. Ange has been living in her dream home near Wabamun, west of Edmonton, for 22 years.
My husband had built this for us, and then he passed away.
After her husband died 2 years ago, she decided to rent the house out on Airbnb.
It was so beautiful, I wanted to share it.
In the middle of January, a woman rented the house for 1 week. St. Ange was staying with family and says the cold was affecting access to her security cameras. Jocelyn says the house sleeps 14 and she expected people would be coming and going.
What I didn't know was that people were coming and going with truckloads of my stuff.
The thieves took everything, including TVs and pictures off the walls, bed frames, and birth certificates. They emptied out the cupboards. In return, they left used needles behind and a shotgun blast in a wall and ceiling. They even stole her truck.
That was full.
The RCMP says properties that are rented out like this typically have the same risk for a robbery as a regular home. But
this sort of larger scale theft where the house is pretty much ransacked is pretty rare.
St. Ange estimates more than $170,000 in property was stolen and has been quoted $70,000 for cleaning and repairs. What was once a welcoming home built by her husband is now a shell she's no longer emotionally attached to.
And I just looked at it and I thought, I have to sell it. I can't be here. I can't let other people come here anymore. It's just too violating.
Evan Kenny, CTV News, Edmonton.
If you think heavy metal music attracts only two-legged fans, wait until you see a horse that's gone viral for how it rocks out. CNN's Jeannie Moose reports on the musical mare.
Come on, it's party time.
How does this Canadian racehorse named Pretty party? She's a headbanger, but only to certain songs.
Metal was her go-to headbanging music and she loves it.
Her groom, Autumn Purdy, noticed the heavier the metal music, the more the horse would headbang.
Yeah, I looked to my barn manager, I said, do you see what she's doing? We turn the music off, she stops.
At Boger Farms in Ontario, they tested country music. She turned her butt to it, but her appetite for metal was obvious. She feels like she's sort of on beat.
She always is. It's incredible. No matter what song we play, slow jams, she's slow, heavy songs, she's going with the beat.
Sometimes she gets overexcited. Her online fans call her a rocking horse. Her favorite band so far seems to be Slipknot. We had to cut the dirty lyrics, but 7-year-old Pretty isn't offended. Her groom plans to post weekly music reviews with ratings based on headbanging intensity or lack thereof. She feels like a cross between Bojack of cartoon fame and Mr. Ed.
Hello.
The talking horse.
A horse is a horse, of course, of course.
If this horse could sing, she'd probably sing herself. Horse. Jeannie Moose, CNN. New York.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is up 31/10 cents. The price of gold is up $10.60. Oil is up $1.23. Natural gas is down 3 cents. Aluminum is up $10. In Toronto, the TSX is up 333.29 points. The Venture Index is up 4.26. In New York, the Dow Jones is up 348.85, and NASDAQ is up 47.02. Still ahead is the latest ringside report for the Vancouver Canucks. Welcome back. As the NHL season heads into the home stretch, the Canucks remain in first place, but management might still be looking to add to the roster. CTV's Ben Bilger has more on a player with a Stanley Cup pedigree who may join the team. Here's this week's ringside report.
Garland cutting in, centers the puck, gets a return pass and scores. A give and go with Dakota Joshua.
Connor Garland chipped in a pair, and Dakota Joshua had a goal and 2 assists in a 4-2 Canucks win over Chicago Tuesday. After Garland took a big hit late in the third, Joshua answered the bell, completing the Gordie Howe hat-trick while standing up for his diminutive teammate.
Garland said after tonight, he owes you dinner. Where are you getting him to take you?
Somewhere expensive.
The Canucks finished their road trip with 3 wins, 1 loss, and 1 overtime loss.
Gave it away to Charlie Coyle, puts one in front, and they score on the rebound. Brad Marchand.
The regulation loss was a 4-0 drubbing at the hands of the rival Boston Bruins.
It was disappointing, and there was certainly build-up, and if the Canucks had an off night, it's unfortunate that it was in that matchup. Now, they're going to see Boston back here in Vancouver in just over a week's time, so they won't have to wait too long to get a little redemption.
The Canucks could offer 3-time Stanley Cup winner Phil Kessel a contract to add veteran depth. After nearly a year away from the NHL, Canucks coach Rick Tockett's not sure what Kessel might bring to the team.
I don't know. I haven't seen him skate, to be honest. I don't know. I have to see how he's skating down there.
Kessel took the ice with the Abbotsford Canucks Wednesday and looked more beer league than big league at times, showing visible signs of fatigue.
He knows what it takes for him to get into game shape, but it's one thing to be skating on your own or to be skating with a trainer somewhere. It's another thing to step onto the ice with guys that have been playing the better part of a full season.
Black Excellence Night at Rogers Arena, featuring merchandise from Vancouver fashion designer Nashika, is on tap Thursday as the Canucks host the Red Wings. Ben Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
BC Seniors Advocate said she welcomes new federal funding for seniors' health care, and she's particularly excited about the promise to support seniors at home. Isabel McKenzie says she hopes this money can cover home support payments for around 79% of BC seniors who don't qualify for the Guaranteed Income Supplement. BC and Ottawa announced $733 million in federal funds over 5 years that will reportedly help expand home and community care, improve access to palliative and end-of-life services, and improve long-term care quality. McKenzie said she also hopes some funds will be allocated to increase care hours per day for long-term patients to 4.1 hours per day from the current 3.36 hour standard. The BC government recently put out a statement saying that they've appointed lawyer Lawrence Robinson as an associate judge to the Supreme Court of BC. The Ministry of Attorney General said Robinson will join 13 other associate judges who preside over pretrial hearings and rule on motions and procedural matters before full trials. The ministry next said that associate judges used to be known as masters, but the name was changed last month. The ministry last said that Robinson has practiced since 2002 as a litigator in employment and human rights matters and other disputes, and also taught business law at Vancouver's Langara College. That's all of our news for now. From all of us here at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.